For decades, Dean Martin had crafted a persona that made him seem untouchable. The tuxedo, the grin, the glass of whiskey, always in hand, it was an image of leisure and indulgence that audiences adored. But that glass often held apple juice, not scotch. Behind the easy charm was a man of discipline, self-control, and razor-sharp intelligence. His on-stage coolness masked a meticulous planner who studied the fine print of every contract, negotiated ownership clauses long before such things were fashionable, and built an empire piece by piece while everyone else thought he was just winging it. Dean knew how fleeting fame could be. He'd seen it firsthand in Hollywood. The stars who shone brightly for a few years only to burn out broke and forgotten. He refused to be one of them. He understood something most entertainers didn't. The man who controls his image, his art, and his business decisions controls his destiny. That belief became the cornerstone of a financial strategy that would one day make his family weep in disbelief at what he had quietly accomplished. That if this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. In the 1950s and 60s, Las Vegas was booming, and Dean Martin was its crown jewel. The casinos adored him, not only for the crowds he drew, but for the atmosphere he created, a sophisticated, mischievous brand of entertainment that embodied the city itself. But Martin saw Las Vegas differently than his peers did. Where others saw quick paydays, he saw partnership opportunities. Instead of simply accepting performance fees, Dean began negotiating for partial ownership stakes in venues and hotel entertainment wings. He wanted equity, not just applause. At the time, few entertainers dared to think like that. But Martin's quiet financial brilliance changed the game. His deals gave him recurring income from the very places he performed, transforming him from a hired act into a business stakeholder. By the late 60s, his Las Vegas contracts included profit-sharing clauses, meaning that long after his shows ended, the money kept flowing in. It was this foresight, this blend of art and arithmetic, that made his financial footprint grow exponentially even as his public presence began to fade. Dean Martin's charm translated seamlessly to television, but again, his genius wasn't just in the performance, it was in the paperwork. When he signed his contract for The Dean Martin Show in 1965, he negotiated one of the most unusual deals in Hollywood history. He would own a portion of the show's master tapes and residual rights. It was a move so forward-thinking that many executives thought he was being overly cautious. But time would prove them wrong. Decades later, when reruns and syndication became a goldmine, those rights generated millions for his estate. The family who once saw him as a man of few words discovered the depth of his financial wisdom. Even as technology evolved, first VHS, then DVDs, and eventually streaming platforms, Dean Martin's content ownership ensured that his voice, his smile, and his profits would never truly fade. He had built not just fame, but financial immortality. Dean Martin's approach to music ownership was equally visionary. While many of his contemporaries sold their rights for upfront cash, Dean insisted on long-term royalties. He structured agreements that gave him a share in the publishing and performance rights of his biggest hits, songs like That's Amore, Everybody Loves Somebody, and Ain't That a Kickin' Head. These timeless melodies became income streams that never dried up. Even after his passing, his catalog continued to generate millions through licensing deals, movie placements, commercials, and digital streaming. Every time his silky voice drifts through a cafe, a film, or a holiday playlist, a portion of that sound carries back to the trust he left behind. His music was more than art, it was a living investment portfolio designed to keep his family comfortable long after he was gone. While Hollywood stars burned through fortunes buying flashy mansions, Dean Martin quietly assembled a portfolio of properties that grew in value over time. He preferred land over luxury, neighborhoods over headlines. From Beverly Hills to Palm Springs, he chose real estate, not for show, but for stability. He was known to say, "You can't drink a house, but you can live off one." It was his subtle nod to the discipline that shaped his life. These properties, carefully chosen and rarely sold, became one of the cornerstones of his wealth. Each home, each piece of land, was held through trusts or shell corporations to protect against Hollywood's unpredictable winds. By the time of his passing, his real estate holdings had appreciated so dramatically that even seasoned investors were stunned. His family, upon reviewing the portfolio, realized that while he joked about being lazy, Dean had been working smarter than anyone around him. Dean Martin's financial strategy wasn't just luck, it was a calculated rebellion against the wasteful culture of fame. While many stars chased trends, he chased timelessness. He avoided risky ventures, ignored stock market fads, and focused on slow, steady accumulation. Easy money disappears faster than applause, he once said to a close friend, a line that became almost prophetic. His team of accountants and lawyers were carefully selected not for their prestige, but for their loyalty. He kept his finances private, avoided unnecessary publicity, and reinvested profits rather than flaunting them. In a city where extravagance was currency, Dean valued quiet growth. The result was not just wealth, it was resilience. Through divorces, career shifts, and changing public tastes, his fortune endured. And that endurance became his unspoken masterpiece. Perhaps the most remarkable part of Dean Martin's legacy lay in his understanding of intellectual property decades before it became a buzzword. He trademarked his name and likeness, ensuring that any use of Dean Martin in advertising, merchandise, or posthumous releases would require permission from his estate. This protection extended even into the digital era, where holograms, remastered albums, and documentaries could all generate new revenue streams. It wasn't about greed. It was about control, the same control he had sought throughout his life. Dean wanted to make sure his image remained dignified, never commercialized beyond recognition. And in doing so, he created one of the most valuable celebrity brands in history, managed with precision by his heirs. When Dean passed away, his family discovered something even more precious than the fortune: letters. Handwritten notes sealed in envelopes addressed to each of his children. They weren't about money or fame. They were about life, humility, and gratitude. He reminded them to never confuse laughter with love, and never forget that silence can be stronger than applause. Reading those words, surrounded by the tangible proof of his brilliance, investments, properties, royalties, the family understood what Dean Martin's legacy truly was. It wasn't the cars, the mansions, or the millions. It was the foresight to protect them all, the discipline to plan for a future he would never see, and the love to make sure none of his children would ever have to chase fame to survive. The true moment of revelation came when the family lawyers finalized the distribution of his estate. There were gasps, even tears, not because of the staggering numbers, but because every account, every trust, every investment reflected thoughtfulness. Dean had not just left behind wealth, he had left behind peace. His grandchildren would have educational funds. His ex-wives would have stability. His name would never be sold off or diluted. Every move was deliberate, and every decision carried love in its logic. It was then that they realized Dean Martin's legacy wasn't about his charm or his coolness, it was about responsibility. He had performed the greatest act of love any man could, securing his family's future while preserving their dignity. In the end, Dean Martin's story is not just a tale of fame or fortune. It's a study in duality. The entertainer who appeared carefree but lived with purpose, the man who seemed detached but cared deeply, the icon who mastered the art of leaving behind more than memories. His death on Christmas Day now feels symbolic, a gentle reminder that behind every twinkling light there can be quiet sacrifice and unspoken wisdom. Decades later, his voice still echoes through time, crooning songs of love and laughter. But for those who knew him best, it's his silence, the still, steady wisdom of his planning, that speaks the loudest. And when his family looks at what he built, they don't just see numbers in an account. They see a man who turned coolness into clarity, charm into foresight, and fame into forever.